All right, hi folks. This is Larry Mussolino. I wanted to record a supplementary video for Module 16 in Math022. A few students were having trouble with this topic of graphing a linear inequality, and there's another topic on graphing a system of linear inequalities. So let me work through these two topics, and hopefully this will help you get started. Let me start with this one. This one is asking you to just graph a single inequality. Now, why is this an inequality? Well, if you had an equal sign, this would be an equation. But instead of an equal sign, we could have a greater than sign. We could have a less than or equal to sign. These are called inequalities. And we want to know how to graph these on this graph. And there's going to be a few steps to follow, and it's going to be very similar to graphing the equation of a line, but we have to add in one or two extra steps. So let me outline the steps that we're going to follow. So they want us to graph this inequality. Step one is graph the equation. So I'm going to pretend there was an equal sign, and I'm going to write this as y equals -2 over 3x plus 1. Now, do you notice there was a negative sign in front of the fraction here to begin with, but I'm going to move the negative sign and put it up with this number on top of the 2. That's going to make it a little easier to graph. So step one is going to be graph the equation. Step two is when you go to graph the line, make the line either solid or dashed. How will you know whether to make it solid or dashed? Well, if it was y less than or equal to, or y greater than or equal to, that's when you would use a solid line. But if you just had a less than symbol or a greater than symbol, you would make the line dashed. Of course, in our example, we're using a greater than symbol. That means we're going to need a dashed line for our example here. And there's a little button here that lets you switch back and forth between solid and dashed lines. I'll show you how to use that in a second. The last step, the third step, is you must shade in one side of the line. So when we draw this line, we'll either be shading in the top or the bottom. How do you know whether to shade in the top or the bottom? Well, the key to this is going to be using what's called a test point. I'll show you how to do that in a second. All right, let's get started. Let's graph the equation y equals -2/3 x plus 1. Well, if you remember, the way you can do this is you can compare this to y equal mx plus b. So for us, we have y equals -2/3 x plus 1. So our slope m is whatever number is sitting in front of the x. So for us, our slope is -2 over 3. And this number back here, this b value, is called the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is 1. So you might remember how to do this plotting. First, you go to the y-intercept and put a dot here. Well, I'm going to the y-axis. Right here's the y-axis. I'm going to a height of 1, and I'm putting a dot there because that's the y-intercept. Now I use the slope as the instructions on how to get to a second point. Well, this -2 on the top here is telling me go down 2, and the 3 on the bottom is saying go over to the right 3. Remember, slope is vertical change divided by horizontal change. So this number on the top is telling me the vertical change, but if it's negative, that means go down 2. The number on the bottom is telling me the horizontal change, so that's telling me go over to the right 3. All right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go down 2, Here I am going down 2. And I'm going to go over to the right 3, and I'm going to put another red dot right here. And I'm going to connect these with a straight line. Let me go to step 2. Should we make the line solid or dashed? Well, we said if you have a greater than symbol, like we do, you should make the line dash. So I'm going to make this a dashed line. I'll actually do this in Alex in just a second. All right, there's our dashed line. So this was step 1, graphing a line. Step 2, we had to use a dashed line because our inequality had the greater than symbol in it. Step 3, we want to pick a test point. Now, the easiest test point to pick is 0, 0. So I'm going to use 0, 0. You don't have to use 0, 0. You can use any point you want, but I think 0, 0 is the easiest. So what that means is I'm going to put a test point right here at 0, 0. Let me make this purple so you can see it. Here is our test point right here. Now, what we do is plug in the test point into the starting inequality. So let's do that. Our starting inequality is y greater than negative 2/3 x plus 1. Well, I know our x value is 0, our y value is 0, so I'm going to plug those in. So y gets replaced with a 0, x gets replaced with a 0. What I want to know, is this true or false? Well, this is going to be 0 is greater than 0 plus 1. That means 0 is greater than 1. Well, that's false. 0 is not greater than 1. So I came to a false statement here. When it's a false statement, so the test point can either make the inequality true or false. When it's a false statement, you shade in the other side of the line relative to the test point. So if you notice, my purple test point is below the line, but I have to shade in the other side of the line. So I'm going to shade in above this red line. Now, what if the test point generated a true inequality? Well, if it was true, I would be shading in the side of the line containing the test point. So in this example, if this inequality had been true, I'd be shading in the bottom of below that red dashed line. All right, let me go do this in Alex because I want to show you how to shade in using Alex. So let me get rid of some of this here. And let me go and plot the line to begin with. So I'm going to come over here to the line tool. I'm going to start out going to the y-intercept, which is right here. Notice it says place the first point. So I'm going to click my mouse. Now I need the second point. All right, I'm going to go down. I'm starting at the y-intercept. I'm going down 2. That was down 1, down 2. Now I'm going over to the right 3. 1, 2, 3. I'm clicking my mouse. There is the line. But remember, we have to make this line dashed. So now I'm going to come over here and click on dash and come over to the line and click the line. And notice now it's a dashed line. One last step, I have to do the shading. Well, this icon right here lets you shade. So I'm going to click there. And remember, our conclusion was we wanted to shade above this line. So I'm going to click anywhere up here and click my mouse and it's shaded. And there is my answer. Okay, so let me summarize. We started out graphing the equation of the line. That was our first step. Because our inequality symbol was a greater than, that means make the line dashed. Then we had to decide whether to shade above the line or below the line. You pick any test point you want. I decided to pick the test point 0, 0 because that's the easiest to work with. Once you pick the test point, you plug it in the inequality. And let me write down here the summary. So once you plug it into the inequality, if the inequality is true, then you shade in the side of the line containing the test point. But what if the inequality is false? Well, if the inequality is false, you shade in the other side of the line not containing the test point. So shade in the side of the line not containing the test point. All right, so that was the method to graph one inequality. Let me go to that other topic that's a little more complicated than this, which is it's called graphing a system of two linear inequalities. So this is going to be the same idea, but they're going to give us two inequalities. Now, here's what we're going to do. Let me call this inequality A and B. We're going to follow the same three steps that we just talked about for each one of these two equations. When we go to do the shading, our final answer for this problem will be the region where the two shadings overlap each other. Because we're going to be shading in one side of the line for inequality A. We're going to be shading in one side of the line for inequality B. Where you see those two shadings overlap is the region you want to shade in as your answer for this problem. All right, so let's get started. So let's do inequality A to begin with. So I'm going to graph y equals negative 2x plus 7. Now I'm going to make negative 2 over 1 to turn it into a slope. So for this example, the slope is negative 2 over 1, and the y-intercept is 7. Now I'm noticing in this example, it's a less than or equal to symbol. So this is a less than or equal to symbol. That's going to tell me to use a solid line. All right, so let's go graph this one. Let me go and graph this. I'm going to grab the line tool. The y-intercept is 7, so I'm coming up here to 7 on the y-axis right there. I'm going to click my mouse. The slope is go down 2 and over 1. I'm going to click. The reason I went down 2 and over 1 is because of this slope. So this negative 2 says go down 2. And the 1 on the bottom says go over to the right 1. All right, and I'm going to leave the line solid. All right, I'm going to pick a test point now because I want to know, should I shade the top of this line or the bottom of the line? So I'm going to pick the test point, 0, 0. All right, let me go to the starting inequality. It was y less than or equal to negative 2x plus 7. I'm going to plug in x equals 0, y equals 0. So a 0 goes here. A 0 goes here. 0 less than or equal to 0 plus 7. 0 less than or equal to 7. Well, that's true. 0 is less than 7, so true. So that tells me shade in the side of the line containing the test point. Well, our test point was 0, 0, so let me put that here. So here's our test point. So I'm going to shade in the side of the line containing the test point. So that means I'm going to be shading in this side of the line. All right, let's go and do the same for inequality B. All right, well, the equation would be y equals 3x plus 5. I'm going to make 3 over 1. So the slope is 3 over 1. The y-intercept is 5. There's a 5 up here. All right, I'm noticing the symbol here is a greater than symbol. Greater than symbol means use a dash line on this one. So let me go graph this. I'm going to start out putting a point on the y-axis at 5, and then I'm going to use the slope as instructions to get to the next point. Well, this 3 here says go up 3, and the 1 on the bottom says go over to the right 1. All right, let's do it. I'm going to the graphing menu here. I'm going to go to a y-intercept of 5. There it is. Now I'm going to go up 3. 1, 2, 3, over 1. Click my mouse. There is the second line, but I've got to make a dash. I'm going to click here and move my mouse over and click on that line, and there it is dashed. All right, but we have to know what side should we be shading in, left side or right side. All right, well, maybe I should say top and bottom of the dash line. So let's do it. Let's pick a test point. I'm going to use the same test point 0, 0 because it makes things a lot easier to calculate. Here's the starting inequality, y greater than 3x plus 5. I'm going to plug in y as 0, x is 0. So that means 0 is greater than 0 plus 5. 0 is greater than 5. That's false. Well, if it's false, that's telling me shade in the other side of the line. All right, here's the test point. I've got to shade in the other side of the line. Well, remember, we're working with this dash line. So I'm going to be shading in this side of the dash line. Now, what I want for my answer is where the two shadings overlap. So I'm looking for where does the red and the purple shading overlap each other, sitting on top of each other. Well, let me highlight it in black. Only this region right here is where the overlap happens. So I'm going to be shading in this region that I'm highlighting here in black. So what I'm going to do now to finish this problem is I'm going to come over to the shading tool, and I'm going to come over here to this overlap section, click my mouse, and there it is. I'm going to say check. We'll see if we did this all correctly. And it checks out. So this was a bit complicated, but what we had to do here was graph each inequality, shade in each inequality, and then look for where the two shadings overlap each other. Now, a suggestion is if you're going to do this on paper, have two colored pencils available, like a red pencil and a blue pencil. Or maybe you want to do it with highlighter colors. So you can shade, the one inequality red, shade the other inequality blue, let's say. And then where you see the two shadings sitting on top of one another, that is your final answer. That is the region you should be shading in as your answer for this type of topic here. All right, folks, hope that's helpful. Let me know if you have any questions as you're working here in Module 16.